Does facing your fears actually help you get over them? This week on Carlie's Couch, we discuss facing your fears, exposure therapy, and action quelling anxiety.
Welcome to Carlie's Couch. Thank you for joining us once again. We hope you have a great week ahead of you.
Yeah, how you feeling today, Lexi?
I'm so cold right now. I forgot to get a jacket before we started recording today, but it's like 60 degrees or something. So I'm like really freezing, like in my bones a little bit.
Man, just because I know what's coming in the summer, I'm like, I love it. I made a pot roast. I made some soup this week. I'm having a good week in the kitchen, y'all. Great week.
Look, that's great. I think that it's supposed to also get really hot coming up soon, so that will be nice. And just a time for, people having more like break time in the spring and getting outside and all that. At least for us in LA, it should have been a little warmer, but I appreciate when it goes up and down.
Yeah, I like having the different days. I was like, man, Batman would have loved the weather the other day out here. It was all hazy and all this. Not like our consistent sunny, but he would have liked that day. Gotham would have been going up.
And speaking of Gotham, that's a good segue into the craziness in the streets. Gosh, Gotham could never catch a break. I actually was looking for Batman Begins the other day. I forgot where I found it. I had to like get into somebody's Max or something to get to it. And I put it on because I love Cillian Murphy. And I like seeing the Scarecrow, which is about the fears, where it's like his power or evil power was like making people see spiders and like weird things like that and make them go crazy. Anyway, I fell asleep watching it. So I was like, dang, after wanting to see it for like 2 weeks.
Peaceful.
I was like, that didn't really turn out the way I thought. So I still need to go back and watch it again. But today we're going to talk about facing your fears and if facing them is what really like helps you get over them. Like, is that the best thing for you?
Yeah, I saw some random video on TikTok that kind of sparked this for me, but then I really started thinking about it. And actually recently I had like a real life example of facing my fears. So I teach mindfulness and movement at Blackout Weekend for the past 2 years. And Blackout Weekend is they bring a whole bunch of Black folks to a mountain, make it more accessible, have parties, have movement, have safe spaces for Black people on mountains because they're not always accessible or welcoming. Anyway, so I teach there, and it was my first time going on a mountain. Like, I've been to a mountain before, but never like up there on the lift. And so I was doing the little ski bike, which is a new thing. It's not like an old school ski bike. They're very different, but they're kind of cool. So look them up. And on the little bunny hill at the bottom, like when you're practicing. And I was like, okay, I can do this. They're like, yeah, let's go up. It's just like this, but up there. And I was like, oh, I can do this. We got up there, and it was not just like that up there. In fact, it was not. The California side of South Lake Tahoe actually doesn't have bunny slopes. They just have a green, which is above a bunny slope, apparently. I don't know anything about this, but I look at that hill, and the one down was this. The one up there was like that. And I was terrified. Like, body sees that. I was like, oh, no. Oh, my God. And the way you gain speed is similar to a snowboard. And I'm assuming skis. I've never been on skis. But you stand up on these little pedals and you lean forward. So you lean down. And that's how you speed up going down this big-ass mountain. And I was terrified, and I was like, nope, we gonna do it.
It's gonna be a snowball.
A snowball, man. And so get on the lift, and they had to help me, and I had to like help carry this little thing up there. Anyways, got up there, and I went down, but I kept like, I would go down a little bit, and then I would swerve off to the side to stop for a second, because there's also a whole bunch of people on this mountain with me, and I'm more scared of them than I am of the mountain, because it's just too much going on. These old people, like I'm talking their 80s, shredding. These little kids, 2 years old, 4 years old, shredding, and I'm terrified. So I did it, and then they were like, okay, well, the people helping us, like, okay, well, are you done? I'm like, oh, no, I'm scared. I have to go again. Like, I'm so scared. Like, I don't want my fear to win today. I feel like I want to have this experience. I want to be able to have fun. I want to face it. So you have to take another mini lift to get back to the top of the bunny hill, which wasn't a bunny hill. And I did it again. And again, I was terrified. Like, and I busted my ass a few times, but it was fun. And then the third time I was like, okay, if you do it one more time, then like you can be done. But like, I want you to face your fear one more time just to make sure that you don't let your fears win. Like, you're up here on a mountain. You've never gotten to do these things before. And like the ride up the little lift was beautiful. And so I was grounding in gratitude. But all of that to say, I make facing my fears like a way of life. Like, anytime I notice I'm really, really scared to do something, I have to go do the thing.
Well, that's admirable. So I'm gonna guess that you are agreeing that facing your fears helps you actually get over them.
Yeah.
Or did it just help you to tolerate it and just make you feel like a stronger person for being able to deal with it? I guess that's the question that we're going to end up asking today. But let's talk about exposure, what that means. Exposing yourself to your fears. There's an actual form of therapy called exposure therapy. And that's about gradual, repeated confrontation of feared stimulus. So, for example, putting yourself in spaces where you may be afraid, like if you have social anxiety, nothing that is like necessarily putting you in harm, but to show you that you are not at harm with certain types of fears that a lot of people may have.
Yeah, and this can be done a few ways. Like one is imagine. So therapists would walk a client through an imagined scenario and help them face it in their heads first. It can be virtual. They said there's games and activities and things you can do virtually to do it, or in real life. So if you do have that social anxiety, maybe they'll challenge you to go sit at a cafe and talk to people, or sit there by yourself, or do the thing that you're really scared of.
But sometimes there's things like public speaking where even though you may not say like I'm scared of public speaking, like you get nervous, or you may have a little bit of fear in you every time you do it, even if you did it like every day. So what would you say about the idea that facing your fear sometimes just helps you to be able to deal with it and know that you can handle it, but it's still like a necessary like adrenaline and the rush in your body?
Yeah, I've heard that some professional athletes still get nervous every time they're about to have a big race for track. Like every time they're lining up on the line, and a lot of times it does get that adrenaline going. And so it's our body. Like I think anxiety and excitement are two sides of the same coin. Sometimes it's the same frenetic energy, and it's how we process it. But it's interesting because for me, I feel like fear or doing something helps me get over it most of the time. But for some people, like I know they hate public speaking and they hate presenting, and I work with them, and whenever they have to do it every time, they're like, man, I got to do this today. I don't want to do it. And then they'll do it, but then they'll try to rush and get done. So I don't think that it works every time to help you get over a fear.
Okay. So that's exposure and putting yourself into certain positions. But what is taking action over anxiety mean?
Yeah, I was thinking about this idea. This was my first thought for the episode about action quelling anxiety. Like if I'm feeling anxious about something, that's that frenetic energy I was talking about. It's very high. You might feel your heart beat. You might be sweating a little bit, sweaty palms, might be nervous, might be pacing. And action is giving that energy somewhere to go. And so, for example, if I'm so nervous about launching, let's say I designed a line of t-shirts or something, and I'm so nervous about launching, and I'm just scared, and finally I just press launch. And so it's just the repurposing of all of that energy into something.
And what that's making me think about is what we often do is we get so scared, or we'll let kind of fear put us into inaction. And then so if you're like, no, I'm not gonna do this right now, or if you keep putting things off, that actually can sometimes damage you more, because that whole time it's like you're almost like staying with the fear. You're still putting yourself and your body through those feelings, and it's like now you're starting to feel bad and feel shameful, like you haven't done the thing. And sometimes fears, when we avoid them so long, they actually just turn into more of a thing about shame. Like when we talk about stuff like, don't even not looking at your bank account for a long time, or not doing a budget. It's like you're kind of avoiding seeing what's real. And then after a while, you're just like, there's so much more to unpack than the actual like fear of the money, that now you really got to do such a deep dive to understand like what's going on, like to unpack all of that. So it's interesting though, that when you take action, now it's like you have more data. So like if I'm over here afraid, like, oh man, if I say this idea, everybody's going to laugh at me. But like if you practice taking action and just doing the thing, also you'll realize like people are not laughing, and then you're like, oh well, what are the actual facts? And like that's actually not a fact. And so it can also kind of push fear away a little bit, because you're starting to see more evidence of the truth or the facts, which may not correlate with that fear.
Yeah, when I was reading up about like fear and anxiety and like even the difference that anxiety, it keeps you stuck. It keeps you from doing a thing. Like you might be fearful to quit your job or launch a business or whatever, but it's the anxiety that holds you back because of shame, because of guilt, because of fear of failure, because of all these things. And so anytime I feel like you're taking an action towards a thing you want to do, and it doesn't even have to be the big thing. Maybe you don't drop it, but maybe you find an embroidery person because you want to get them embroidered. Like that's a step of action towards a thing to help you keep working in your goals. And then that can help quell anxiety because you're actually working towards a thing.
And there's some fears that I feel like you can expose yourself to, and after a while you're like, you're not afraid of that thing anymore. And then there's other things where you really are just building up the virtue of having courage, and you're getting good at facing a thing because it needs to be done or it has a reason, etc. But you are able to work through it. Like that's also a big deal and a big superpower. So you can take actions and still be afraid, but it's still beneficial in most of the examples that I can think of to face those fears and to put yourself in that position, even if sometimes at the end of the day it's just to show yourself like you didn't die.
It makes me think about the meme that's like, are you going to cry? Are you going to boss up? And it's like, first of all, I'm going to do both. And so for me, it's like, first of all, I'm going to be scared, but I'm still going to do the thing. But like, I might be fearful about it. But I think that's the beautiful part is that courage. And I like the word courage to show up and do something, even though you're still you're scared, even though you could get rejected, even though people could laugh at you, even though you could lose the race, whatever the thing is, you're still willing to show up for yourself and go for it. And I think that's always commendable.
So now that we've talked about how helpful it can be, is it always good to force yourself into fear? Like, is there some times where that may not be the best thing to do?
I think fears can be rooted in very real traumatic things and also just in our brain and very like hodgepodge, doesn't really matter things. But I think for the stuff that's more deeply rooted, it can be traumatizing, re-traumatizing to face them or try exposure therapy or do something, especially for those deeper down fears or those things that have kind of maybe shattered part of your life or really hurt you. That might be something that exposure therapy might not be best for.
It makes me think about how practices change in different fields as well. Like in acting, I've seen conversations where actors talk about new and different ways to access particular emotions, like when they need to cry in a scene or be afraid or feel some deep feeling. Because I feel like back in the day, they would say, some people would say like, think of some, real terrifying things or like re-traumatize yourself essentially, but how that would really wear on people after a while. And so like finding other ways to still be able to do their job in that way just kind of shows me that yes, like to re-traumatize yourself and to really put yourself back in certain spaces, it can be healthy for you. And so when we're talking about facing your fears, you still may need to look at what the result of that's going to be if it might make things worse.
Yeah, because fears aren't always a bad thing. Like our fear actually keeps us alive. That's our brain being like, whoa, what's going on? Protect yourself, move, whatever. And so I think looking at fears sometimes as signals or indicators, not necessarily directives, but at least being able to see them as a signal or as something we should at least consider.
How would you know if you're like overdoing it with trying to face your fears? Or what could that look like?
I would say, for example, if I had social anxiety and I was trying to do exposure therapy and I went like to a movie by myself and I had a panic attack, probably too much. I probably wouldn't start there, but maybe I could start with going to pick up a coffee from a place by myself and then leaving. Like maybe you start small. Maybe you start to gently introduce things that are helping you gradually face whatever the fear is.
So you might be overexposing yourself if you feel like physical things going on with yourself while you're putting yourself in that position. And especially being by yourself, that might not be the most healthy thing to do. Okay, so we're going to wrap this episode up with a few more questions just to think about some things we dealt with. Now that we've talked about it, Carlie, I'm trying to think about a fear that I've faced that has shrunk over time. Because I think a lot of times, too, we kind of forget about the things that we've, like, kind of overcome. Like, every once in a while, you remember, like, oh, I used to have a problem with this or that. So, can you think of one? I'm thinking of one, mine.
Yeah, I used to be scared to speak up in relationships, like when things are really bothering me or I was upset about something because I didn't want them to think I was over emotional or I cared too much what they thought, basically. And I was scared of them leaving me or not choosing me or insert whatever thing here, people pleasing thing or traumatic thing here. But now I don't do that. And it feels really nice to know like I'm willing to speak up regardless of however the conversation goes.
That's a good one. And I definitely can co-sign on that exact same thing. And then outside of relationships, I would say also to speaking up for myself and advocating for myself when it comes to work. And so just being more comfortable talking about what I'm doing and, being more cognizant of what like the value is when you're talking to people.
And that's funny because I feel like when it comes to work and when it comes to posting and sharing and being more vocal about what I'm working on, that's actually something that I don't have like a direct, like I'm scared of this, but I realize I'm resistant to it for a reason. And that if I actually just faced it and did it, it probably would lessen with exposure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it might. Sometimes it's not even like doing the thing's not even hard. It's like, why do I just keep kind of putting certain stuff off? I have that with a lot of different tasks too, because I'm like, this stuff don't be hard. It's just, you're just avoiding doing it. So a lot of it is self-discovery that you have to do. Is there something that you've been avoiding that you feel like you should try to do some exposure on?
Outside of the work stuff, that's pretty much the only one.
I'll say, for me, I'm working on exposure of having more random conversations or talking to people out in places, I would say. So that's something that I can keep doing or just do even more.
And I saw one when I was researching for this exposure therapy, and it's rejection therapy. So for people who are so scared because of rejection, like this person's therapist, and I don't know if they made that up or not, but like told them to like go ask for things that you're probably going to get rejected on. So like go to the coffee shop and ask them, can you do your own latte art? Because like that's wild. But it's so funny because a lot of the times they'll actually say yes. And you're like, oh, I never thought this could be a thing. But practicing being okay with rejection and people saying no to you.
Yeah, I'm about to say the benefit is like people say no, and then you realize like it's not that deep.
But did you die?
Or people laugh or whatever. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing for people to do in general is just start asking different types of questions and see what happens. Do you have any fears that you've just accepted that you're not necessarily trying to fix?
Like I said, I kind of have a practice where if I'm scared of something, I make myself do it.
I can't think of anything that falls into this category. I feel like the things that might be in this category would be like fear of like zombies and stuff like that, or like of a thing. But I can't think of anything like crippling, and anything that has to do with like life mindset type stuff. Then I'm gonna be interested in like growing with that and figuring that out. So, maybe not. Probably there's probably something.
Yeah. I want y'all to take some time this week to notice fear in your life and where it comes up. And then remembering that facing fears can help you build confidence. And so thinking through what can you expose yourself to this week? What can you push yourself on? What can you be more honest with yourself about? And knowing that even if you do choose to do exposure therapy, to not overwhelm yourself, to not jump right in and do all of that, but to gently start to move with intention, safety, and compassion for yourself.